Welcome to our World News Update for February 2nd, 2024. With everything that's going on in the world today, we obviously can't cover it all. However, we'll cover several big points just the same. First, I need to make a point of correction from our last World News Update. In that report, I noted how the West Bank was owned by Jordan. However, a good friend of mine reminded me that's not the case anymore. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel took control of much of the West Bank and has occupied those parts since then. In 1988, Jordan gave up their sovereignty and ownership of the parts they maintained over to the PLO. That's the Palestinian Liberation Organization. However, what Jordan does still maintain control over is guardianship over the Muslim shrines in Jerusalem. It appears this guardianship of these sites are now the only official role of Jordan in the West Bank. So, while Jordan plays a role as overseer to the Islamic sites there, they don't own the West Bank. Also, in the last update, we reported on the large unmarked bus that was stuck and filled with illegals in the hills of Arkansas. After reporting on that, we received many messages from people seeing the exact same things from all over the country. Buses filled with men and from many different nationalities. Which brings us to the first point of concern for this update: the crisis at the Texas border. Let it be known, this is not something new. It's been going on for a long time, but with each passing year, it's only gotten worse. And over the last 3 years, it's escalated to what many are calling a breaking point. While Texas and the U.S. government fight over who has the right to defend the border, we're seeing the increase of chatter regarding civil war on this matter. However, though that's a definite concern, the bigger danger is how it seems only a handful of news sources are talking about the element of terrorists crossing the southern border. An article from thedailysignal.com 6 weeks ago gave the heading, "They're already here. Arizona sheriff says terrorists are coming across the border." The article said, in fiscal year 2023, Customs and Border Protection encountered 736 illegal aliens who were listed on the U.S. Terrorist Screening Database, also referred to as the Terrorist Watch List, including both at ports of entry and between the ports, according to the CBP data. And that's just those who are caught. In the interview, the sheriff said, "People from 170 different countries that have come into our borders over the last 2.5 years. Yuma sector alone had almost 4,000 Russians last year. There's been over 30,000 Chinese nationals that have come across the border. There's been over 7,000 Mauritanians last year." If you don't know where Mauritania is, it's on Western Africa below Morocco and has become one of the leading breeding grounds for Al-Qaeda. These are people that don't love America. What should be alarming to Americans is that a lot of these people are coming from countries where they do not love America. And now, with what we see in Israel, you have Americans now finally opening their eyes and saying, hey, could this happen to us here? Should we be concerned about Hamas coming in across our borders? Well, the reality is, they're already here. We have been letting people in for the last 2.5 years. As a sheriff, I've been screaming about it, especially over the last 8 to 12 months. I have been yelling about this is the national security threat. Later in the video, he describes how during the last 2.5 years, over 4 million have crossed the border illegally. I strongly encourage you to watch the 5-minute interview of the sheriff on that website. Please watch it. The link is below. Ladies and gentlemen, if this doesn't concern you, my concern is that one day it'll overtake you. In fact, this is where many in political positions are concerned with how the U.S. electrical grid is openly exposed. a target in plain sight. In fact, just this week, FBI Director Christopher Wray warned of Chinese government efforts to jeopardize critical pieces of American infrastructure such as water treatment plants and electrical grids, calling on the country to prepare itself to fend off disruptive cyber attacks. As given on thehill.com, Christopher Wray said, PRC hackers are targeting our critical infrastructure, our water treatment plants, our electrical grid, our oil and natural gas pipelines, our transportation systems, and the risk that poses to every American requires our attention now. China's hackers are positioning on American infrastructure in preparation to wreak havoc and cause real-world harm to American citizens and communities. They're not focused just on political and military targets. We can see from where they position themselves across civilian infrastructure that low blows aren't just a possibility in the event of conflict. Low blows against civilians are a part of China's plan. If you haven't seen it already, you'll want to consider the documentary titled Grid Down, Power Up. It's a 1-hour documentary narrated by Dennis Quaid. It's now available on YouTube. War is knocking on our doorstep, and no one's paying attention. In fact, I believe it's better said that war has been sneaking in the back door, and yet still no one's paying attention. And now, direct war with Iran is being openly discussed, which analysts from all over are screaming how the U.S. doesn't stand a chance in that war because they're already spread too thin and already gave tons of ammo and equipment to Ukraine. The world is teetering on war from so many facets, and yet so few consider the ramifications of what that truly means. Over the last 6 weeks, multiple countries in Europe have been telling their people to prepare for war and prepare for hard times. Yet, how many in the U.S. are even considering the possibility of war on their own soil, let alone taking the growing threat of civil war seriously? All the while, Israel has been moving their military to the northern border in what appears to be preparations to take on Hezbollah, in which I've heard so many analysts say they won't win. If they start a war there, many are saying it will be a much different outcome from Gaza. Contrary to popular belief, Israel is not invincible. Plus, I've said before, when the Ark of the Covenant comes out, and I said when, not if, I'm concerned it will embolden Israel to try to take the Temple Mount. If they do, we'll immediately see the words of Ezekiel chapter 4, as quoted by Yeshua, come to pass, where he said, Luke 21:20, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. Ezekiel 4 said it would be surrounded for 40 days, and then judgment would come. Plus, Ezekiel shows the northern kingdom will be judged in what appears to be simultaneous judgment with them, which could quite possibly be showing both Israel and America being taken out at the same time. I realize that's not something people want to hear. However, considering how everything is building up right now, we can't ignore the possibility. As I've said before, keep your eyes on the Temple Mount. I personally believe we'll see something happen there first, that being namely with the Ark of the Covenant and the original tent of meeting. Well, as always, we don't know the future, but we know the one who does. So let's make it a point to pray as we walk through our everyday routines. Make more time to read. Let's make it a point to invest more time into our relationship with our Heavenly Father like never before. That way, regardless of what lies ahead, we know we're in good company. Keep your hearts humble in Him as we all learn and grow together in His Word. Blessings and shalom.